Rishi's work is on a statewide level, and you know, the idea is we're going to do a 15-minute PowerPoint, you know, to introduce what it is that we do, and then after that we'll just have discussion. This is workshop number 3, civic engagement. Are you in my place? So this is us, Chinese Progressive Association, Boston, and Chinese Progressive Political Action. The goals of our work is to utilize the political arena to strengthen the organizing campaigns that we do. And we do that, we want to highlight key demands of those campaigns through a collective political agenda, to use that work to really broaden and deepen involvement of our community mass base, to use this to unite and develop the leadership of grassroots activists, and to build a citywide alliance that primarily based in communities of color, but also with other allies. And one of our goals is to gain and influence a city council majority by 2013 so that we can have the initiative to propose new policies. And our basic strategy is linking grassroots organizing and political action for racial and economic equality, with expanding our base, leadership development, and citywide coalition building. We've been doing our work really focusing on civic engagement since about 2000, and so over the decade or so that we've been doing that, we've seen a consistent rise in political participation and gradually building up the community's power in the political arena. Key components of our work are that the work is year-round organizing. It's not just turning out for elections. And that's primarily through linking the electoral arena with the grassroots organizing campaigns that we do to develop a grassroots issue agenda. We involve core activists and building captains to sharpen those action or policy demands and bring them back to the broader community so that there's always a flow back and forth with the broader mass base. We do agenda-based ballot questions, candidate questionnaires, forums, voter education, outreach, mobilization, all centered around that collective agenda. And then the staff work with building captains to develop building teams. We just started our 501c4 organization, Chinese Progressive Political Action, this year, and that allows us to do candidate development and candidate support directly. So I think, if anything, in my whole presentation, I feel like this is the most important lesson for us, is that, you know, the key to really getting something out of this work, I think, is, you know, constantly use the work to expand the base, involve people at the base, educate people, and unify the base. So it's not just about voter mobilization. I mean, a lot of people talk about voter mobilization. But, you know, voter mobilization, of course, is key, or you can't win elections or even influence elections. But that mobilization has to come from very deep commitment to really building and unifying that base. So we do that through Know Your Rights education, developing and supporting collective action, grassroots strategy development, and using opportunities to help people learn about society, because we are an immigrant community, and that's very important. Mass community involvement and education, media, public hearings, escalating actions, lobbying, elections. A lot of people have the impression that doing electoral work just means, you know, going to the polls and voting, but we see it as the whole spectrum of activity that we do as organizers. Combining grassroots action with a broad united front of more traditional leaders who can support your demands, so that it's less easy to attack us and isolate us. and at each step of the way, really paying attention to those concentric circles that we're building to, constantly go back, expand, involve, educate, and unite the base. So, over our first stage, which I think was, the last decade, I guess, what we think our victory was that we moved our community, particularly Boston Chinatown, from invisibility to influence. And as an example, in 1974, the city zoned Chinatown for its adult entertainment zone because they said Chinatown doesn't vote. So when they looked around the city, that's where they knew they could put it. In 1993, when the community was fighting a third battle against a parking garage, the mayor, our same mayor, ignored weekly calls about this garage and weekly letters. Not even a phone call or a form letter in response. So that's an example of how little voice we had. And at the same time, we organized a community referendum in which people voted 1692 to 42 against the garage. That was the beginning. That was the first time a lot of people in our community voted in anything. In 2001, residents mobilized for development and zoning hearings and gained multilingual access to public hearings in the city. In 2003, elderly voters who knew now who they wanted to vote for raised voting rights complaints when people inside the polls, who are the mayor's machine, were telling them who to vote for. And in 2005, we won Chinese and Vietnamese bilingual ballots through a combination of grassroots organizing and a lawsuit by Department of Justice. By 2006, we worked with other allies in strengthening and winning some reforms to the city's inclusionary development policy to make developers pay more and target it towards lower income households. And just last year, we won fully bilingual ballots. Transliterated means that the names can be in Chinese characters, which was a really big battle for us, for Boston voters in city council, in city elections. So that had to be won through the city approval as well as the state legislature. So the stage that we're in now, we feel like is, okay, we've become visible, we need to really build political clout and gain representation. So the C4 for us is very important because it allows us to directly engage in a grassroots candidate campaign, and we're currently, our former chairperson is running for city council and just came in first on the preliminary on the 27th. So, our goals for this year are to inspire new participation in voter registration, to double our block and building activists, to strengthen grassroots organizing around jobs, the Chinatown Library, and immigrant rights, which are three of the core campaigns we're doing. Build momentum for redistricting. Municipal redistricting is happening early next year. To strengthen alliances citywide, and for us particularly, we're looking at strengthening the Asian Latino groups, working relationships, and working more with women of color, but also with other allies citywide. And to lay a foundation for citywide coordinated political action, which we have been lacking. So this is just an example of our 2011 community platform. I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but it's about jobs. Public safety includes opposition to secure communities, public education, affordable housing, libraries and community facilities, and redistricting. So we feel like we've come a long way, but at the same time, when we look at the struggles for progressive policies, we lose every time. And the most that we have gotten generally has been 5 votes. And that's been when there was tremendous organizing, which, city life was very core to, around a tenant rights, thing called the Community Stabilization Act, which we fought for twice in city council, and the best we ever did was 8 to 5. Development projects, something around hiring street and youth workers, we always lose. So there are currently 2 at-large city councilors of color and 2 district councilors of color on a 13-member city council. And, you know, sometimes, and then there are 2 white counselors that sometimes vote with us depending on what the issue is. So we always fall at least 1 short, sometimes 3 short of that 7-person majority that we need. So we think, you know, that's our next challenge, is getting them to that 7 votes at least. And we see gaining political initiative through developing a citywide progressive agenda and the coordinated political action, which we think means that we need some kind of citywide progressive political infrastructure that's able to run ballot campaigns and candidates. And we also need to rewrite the rules, you know, which includes redistricting, campaign finance, election day registration, instant runoff voting. These are some of the reforms we could fight for. And actually, I forgot to put in here immigrant voting rights, you know, would be another thing. So I think, you know, that this is going to take us a while. I think that would lay the groundwork for stage 4, which would be about getting to governance and being able to really utilize city government as a platform for organizing. So, you know, we, as I mentioned, you know, we're running somebody for district councilor in the district that includes Chinatown, South Boston, and South End. We think that district representation and redistricting is really key, because if you look around the city, we're not going to get, it's highly unlikely we're going to get another councilor of color or progressive onto the at-large races. And our councilor is the most vulnerable of all the district councilors in the city. So that's why we took on this fight both for ourselves in Chinatown as well as for the city. And people, yeah. So this shows you this chart that since the 1980s, when Boston started district elections, the composition of the city has changed a lot. We are now 53% people of color. But if you look at the district of the councilors, the at-large councilors has also changed. We have 2 out of 4 councilors of color, one Latino and 1 African American. But if you look at the districts, it has remained totally unchanged since the 1980s. And we think that's because the districts are drawn in a way that obstructs rather than allows representation. So what is this? How does this fit into our political vision? You know, we see building a broad united front within the city among communities of color, working class neighborhoods, labor, immigrants, women, youth, environmental justice, LGBT. We want to build the right to the city as a movement strategy space for grassroots-based building community groups. And, you know, where we have some shared analysis, where we can develop a common narrative and communication plan. And also to have, that lays the foundation for us to do more common and shared political education so that we can develop a politically unified, broad base across the city. And we think that needs to combine grassroots direct action and the municipal united front in the electoral arena to build a democratic movement that can propose and win alternative policies, and in the long run to utilize city government as a platform for organizing. Some of the challenges are that city council districts actually obstruct the communities of color right now. We have a strong mayor system, which really limits the power of city council. Here in Massachusetts, it's very strange. You need state legislative approval for many city reforms that just affect your city. Candidate campaigns are increasingly determined by how much money you can raise. Boston has a referendum process that makes it very difficult to put questions on the ballot by signatures. There are very few grassroots organizing groups that also do electoral work. And I think that's a really important aspect of the important arena of struggle. We need more 501c4s, which actually allow us to build our own base and leadership for and maintain it, not just through candidates' separate campaigns. And then one of the big challenges of electoral, I think, is getting to scale, which requires a lot of people power. So I think that what we're doing, it's pretty basic and pretty replicable. Some of the core things are expanding grassroots organizing campaigns to include an electoral aspect, organizing your community around a clear agenda of policy demands, utilizing a variety of tactics to popularize the agenda, and then really trying to go deep with the base building and broad with the United Front so that you have a lot of circles that you are uniting.